Good afternoon. Right, well, I'm back from Thailand and I have a new computer. It's the same spec as my previous computer because they wouldn't upgrade it at the same time as giving me a new one. They acknowledged that there were issues that shouldn't have been happening with my previous computer. And yeah, so I'm going to give it a go. I've kind of got a load of windows open at the moment. It says excellent connection, so fingers crossed. Um, I am so eventually in Thailand anyway, because I kind of knew I was getting off the ball with the market and with the other stuff I was trying to get done over there, like fitness and sorting out my smoking out and things like that. Um, I kind of then, yeah, just stopped doing videos towards the end and stopped doing a lot of analysis. In fact, I was just like, okay, let's just wait and see what happens with the market, but also, yeah, just give me some time to actually have a bit of a holiday while I was out there and then come back here and kind of restart properly. So I thought I'd do a stream today anyway, just to firstly see if the computer is up to it. And secondly, yeah, so I'm not fully across everything, but just to go over some key things that I am aware of that's going on in the market. So I'm not across everything. I'm across enough, but um, I guess what I'm not across is the confluence of everything and whether I think kind of everything's kind of ready for a reversal or ready for a continuation, etc., etc. Anyway, so I'm gonna hopefully not make this very long, and then I will potentially do kind of a better stream or more later this week where I can actually give proper entries and things like that once I've just checked this is working appropriately and recording okay and the stream doesn't crash halfway through, etc., etc. So anyway, one thing I did put in the channel that I had missed, and this was kind of also part of the reason I stopped because I just thought I'm not on the ball enough, is I knew the 2 month close had happened at the end of April, and I was quite focused on which alts had made 2 month demand or supply, and in fact I didn't even get halfway through that list. But what I didn't check foolishly was Bitcoin. So what we had on Bitcoin, let me just go to the chart without any drawings on it. So we do have this monthly supply. So we're still in the monthly supply, although obviously significantly higher and nearly at the top of it. We had the initial rejection off there on, I think that was the Trump pump, which did make a lower low. So arguably that monthly supply played out, but obviously until we get all the way through it, it's still supply. But what happened is then when the 2 month closed, this candle then closed very slightly above. And then what happened was it just tapped off the top and took off, which is kind of what we expect. Or no, not what we expect, but only obviously it can come down deeper into the 2 month demand. But commonly, if we get an immediate close or if it's closed slightly above, you should watch for the immediate possible bounce victory in the first day or two of the next month. So that's kind of what happened. So I was looking for longs in that area anyway. Let's just go down to the 3 day, for example. So we had, like, while we were messing around in here, we had made a 3 day demand, and then I think we made a 5 day. Yeah, so again we made a 5 day by a hair as well. So I was looking for longs in there, but not particularly confident longs because I was unaware that the 2 month had closed as a new demand. So you can see that the wick of this green candle for the real push up candle just tapped onto the top of that 2 month and took off. Not sure what that is there. Oh, actually, no, I do want that in there. Sorry, let's get my drawings up to date. I can see I'm getting an error on my vertical stream already, but it's not the major error. It's the minor error, which normally I get away with, I think. It's an error I don't really understand. Talking about keyframe frequencies. Yeah, so anyway, so yeah, I was looking for longs in here. Like I sort of said it was a difficult area because I wasn't sure how deep we'd go, but we had this, well, there's a 12-hour demand there, but I think there was also a daily, there was a 3 day, I think there was a 2 day, there was a 3 day, then later was the 5 day. And then obviously we took off through that. And then I started looking again potentially for shorts. There was a 3 day supply. I think that was the sort of earliest, or 2 day supply entry there, but obviously we came up higher inside it. And then there was another 12-hour, I think, some more refined entry at 12-hour supply through here. So obviously those have got a long pause. But again, so far we haven't broken down, and even today, so yesterday and today we had a push up, Sunday push up, a Monday dump, closed the CME gap, and then now we're pushing back up again. So we are creating these sort of trend line stops below, but again, until we actually break some demand, I can't be bearish on it. So again, you can see, so what happened here is we made a 3-day demand, and then later we made a 4-day demand, and again we just came back down into that, and we're just taking off again, retesting through that. So yeah, we do have these trend line stops to be aware of, but again, like, I want to see a close back below here for a decent short, or at least, a 12-hour or an 8-hour supply. I think, at the moment we've got a 4-hour supply in there. So, it is a possible short if you want. But the other issue I have with this, and I haven't again checked all the exchanges, so check the other exchanges, is that, so I had that black cross there looking for a taking out of these highs. And I know we've taken out the highs on the CME pair, but on this BitMEX pair, we haven't quite hit that level. So it's a tad short of that level. So again, if we do come back there, you can look again for a swing failure. But again, we're just watching now to see if that's it, and we're going to start to get some sort of a breakdown. But yeah, the structure isn't great for it at the moment because we've just got this huge 4-hour supply. Also from a confluence perspective, so again, so CME, like I say, CME, yeah, we did take out those highs by a tiny bit, but again, still holding 2-day demand in there. Like I had lines looking for the possibility of creating daily supply, but at the moment it's not looking like that, but there's still quite a few hours to go. Korea also was one of the things I noted to the group last week, was that Korea was also still inching up and looking strong within the US dollar pair, and then obviously that helped with the breakout. Again, it's just come off to an SR level that I had marked in here. And structurally, while it looked stronger than the US dollar pair, it's also it was also lower relatively. So the US dollar pair is obviously up here taking out these highs now, whereas the Korea pair is a lot lower. And that's also what we had back here, that when we were retesting here, the US dollar pair was significantly, well, not significantly higher, but a bit higher in structure than the Korea pair. Yeah, so anyway, again, yeah, so we're still in zones of interest for possible shorts on the lower time frame, but we now have that 2-month demand that we're coming off. So, arguably, it's the 2-month demand to play out, then we should take out all-time high that this test potentially. But again, it could come deeper inside the zone first. So it doesn't have to take out all-time high from here, but that would be the target for the 2-month demand, the new 2-month demand, be it for a bounce somewhere in that zone to then take out the high that was before that zone. Yeah, so that's pretty much it on Bitcoin. On the long side for re-entries, like I say, I haven't done this in detail. I haven't added anything new other than the previous, I had sort of various concerns about these levels previously, but then obviously we hadn't gone as high before, and we hadn't made this 2-month demand before. So I'm probably sort of better, more confident of those. This one is not a true demand level, so I don't particularly like it, which is why it's a question mark, but it was just coming back and filling that CME gap, potentially taking out the lows of this zone, so it would be tradable only on a swing failure, else waiting for weekly demand below. But the issue we do have, okay, so at this point in time, is this is weak demand because it hasn't taken out supply. So similarly to what we had here, it is possible, that this still falls off a cliff, like back in August, or or just more slowly, like in June, for a retest. While we get a bigger consolidation here, it is a possibility. But then equivalently, we have the possibility that we do something like this and we go up and take out the high. So just looking for what the structure is going to do at this point. I don't really want to be longing now at resistance still, and I said that down here, but without knowing there was the 2-month demand, that I was still wary of longing in this area because I felt I was too aggressive. But also Bitcoin can do that, I guess. If Bitcoin does want to take off, then it takes off without any retests or retracements. The other issue I've had is the ETFs, that I've kind of the ETFs and just generally the data supporting everything, which hopefully is going to load. So we had a lot of ETF buying at the lows. That being slow at reloading for me. So yeah, we had a lot of ETF buying. Let me have to go back to anything there. Down here, and I saw that apparently Glassnode did a blog saying that there was a lot of buying and support in the 93 to 95k area, and I haven't found that report. I probably need to go and hunt it down because I'm not sure where that computer's now frozen a bit. Back. I'm not sure where that data's come from because it's not what I saw. Like in this area, like when I was looking at this, here we go, our side data. We had selling before. We had buying before that. I mean, BlackRock, I guess, has been buying a little bit the entire time, but and we had a little bit of buying going on again last week, but most of the buying was going on at the lows. So I'm not convinced by the Glassnode comment. Go back to the chart. About this being really good support. I mean, it's good support because it's a 2-month demand, but then we also have this big gap underneath it and untested zones and the CME gap, etc. So do I really think that's going to be great support if it comes back down? I'm not convinced, and that's why I haven't got long entries in there. But I will go and hunt down the Glassnode data and find out like why they're saying that. And it was just a piece of news that I got off clicking this lightning bolt down here where you get the news directly from TradingView. So somebody just reported on the Glassnode blog. So yeah, like I say, we need to see what that data says, or like why it's coming from there. The other thing they did say is that that people are taking profit, and then there were 2 sources that said that people are now taking profits, but then both of them also were sort of slightly cagey and said they're taking profit, but not necessarily enough to knock the price back down again. But again, like I haven't got that data, so I'm unsure. My other issue is so again, we've had a bit more buying today, a bit from Fidelity and a bit from ARK, or 50 odd million from both of those two. But we still have this huge amount of transfers going on from Grayscale, and I probably need to do another search on that to find out if anybody has made any comment on what that means, because there are a massive amount again last week. Again, I'm not sure if it's going to load, but yeah, so 3 days ago, and then yeah, you can see that. I mean, some of them are coming up in the data as sells, but others of them, that's actually there's a buy in there, but there's a buy offsetting a sell. Some of them are coming up in the data as sells, but maybe buys as well. Let me see. So Grayscale, no, just sells through here, but certainly not the quantities that we're seeing transferred around. So I don't know. Maybe they're just messing around and just transferring, making new wallets and things like that. But yeah, it's something to be conscious of. The other thing on the data, yeah, no, so again, that was supporting my lack of support for the Glassnode comment again is, so they're saying that all the buying was coming in here, but when we look at the CVDs, you're just seeing since 93 to 95k anyway, you're just seeing a declining. This is the Coinbase CVD, this first one, and then the aggregated spot CVD also declining. And they were very specifically said that they didn't think futures was driving it, but that was actually when I did think futures was driving this. So either I'm wrong or Glassnode is wrong, one of the two. But from what I see on the data, unless I'm completely misinterpreting it for some reason, then I don't think. I think I was optimistic, keeping all my windows open for this stream just to see what happened. Don't know what I did there. Yes, I clicked. Okay, so yeah, just looking at the hourly chart, so we can see from the lows at 75k. So we did have a lot of buying on Coinbase from 90 down to 75. But then there hasn't been a significant amount of buying in this run upwards. And then, like I say, the aggregated CVD spot, again, there was some buying in that first section of it, but since then it seems to have been selling off. And then most of what we're seeing on the CVD that's supporting the price going up is the CVD futures stablecoin margin, and even the coin margin are dropping. So I very much thought that was a bit of a like much to 75 to 95 was okay, but 95 to 105 for me was very much a sort of short squeeze type thing. And I think all the data that I was seeing when I looked overseas was supporting that. Let me see if I can open XO. Now I'm getting issues with not being able to maintain enough video, so I am going to shut some windows down just to make sure the stream doesn't go crazy. See if this rights itself in a minute. And that's quite a few windows shut. Where are we at? We're 18 minutes in, so I can just come back and see when my camera starts. I'm just going to go to the be right back screen, and I'll be back in just 30 seconds or so, just to see if, because sometimes this fixes itself when I just go out of it for a second and go back in. Okay, I'm back, but the error hasn't resolved itself, so makes it kind of difficult because if no one's watching, I can't get anybody to confirm whether it's working or not. But either way, I shall plug on and hope for the best. And if somebody turns up, please let me know. Um, so yeah, I kind of gave up on looking at XO charts because that's something that is the one that normally breaks the computer, and frankly, even if I'm not doing anything, because it seems to be so data heavy. But basically, what I was going to say is that, so yeah, we have OI was decreasing that entire time, like I said. So we have got an increase in OI over the last like day or two. But when I looked at XO charts to confirm what that was, it's like Binance is really not doing much. So it's actually Bybit appears. I mean, it's both longs and shorts on the Bybit side, but Bybit's really driving this sort of fuckery, which is not really surprising because that's sort of a Bybit derivatives thing when volume is low elsewhere. It's also a public holiday, I think, in Europe today. So and therefore it's in Europe. I don't know, except I'm in Europe, but as far as I'm aware, people are going to work, so maybe not all over Europe, maybe just in some places. So yeah, like maybe yeah, maybe we're just low volume in general now. And then although there are some ETF data coming through on the US side of things. Anyway, just quickly looking on the liquidation. So obviously we came down and took out some liquidations at the lows, but not very many, and there's just left some more. It's obviously left some more above today's high, so there's nothing really significant to look at in there at the moment. And then I did have a look earlier, like on the bigger picture, and again they're just sort of down in that 83 below below this level. In fact, I think they weren't even really below the 93 level for liquidations. Maybe I should just look at that quickly if I can get it to load. I guess it does depend on what time frame you choose. Yeah, so here, yeah, there are some below that 93 consolidation, so that previous consolidation. Yeah, I think I was just mixing it up again. Most of them are there, like less so below, unless I really zoom out a lot further, I guess. But I mean, the longs basically obviously haven't been taken out at all on this entire up run. They've just been moving and moving and moving. So there's going to be a lot of long liquidations going down here, and obviously much fewer on the short side now. Anyway, that's kind of all I wanted to say on this. Just waiting for demand to break if I'm looking for confident shorts. Else you can keep longing as scalps as and when you see setups, because the structure obviously is still up, but in very tentative areas. But you know, it is Bitcoin might just break out from here. Who knows? On US dollar dominance, it was sort of much the same. You know, we're in an area that I wanted to look for a bounce. We are getting some sort of a bounce, but again, not very much. So similar to here, we really got, you know, I was hoping for a bounce up to test one of these areas above, and we didn't get anywhere near there. You know, it's not dissimilar to this. You know, sort of Monday, Tuesday we start dropping and just carry drop from there. So I don't know if we're going to get similar here. We've got Monday where we're kind of going up. But again, I've got these dashed lines were sort of unconfirmed if we close above levels, but we've still got a day. It's only that top one for the daily, the 2-day and the 3-day still have longer to close, but obviously now we're coming back down again. So, and it's challenging because I guess, you know, here we get at least some sort of retracement before a bigger drop, whereas here again, it's not given much really. Below that, we've got monthly demand down here. So, you know, if it does if it's unable to break higher here, having now had a bounce off 2-day demand, I really wanted to see new demand put in, a decent, not this sort of giant 4-hour that we've got there. Hi Aussie man, all is good, all is better now you're here because you can actually tell me that you can hear me properly. Oh, and finally my stream has actually gone to excellent again. I had to pause a bit earlier. To check it was running okay. Yeah, so anyway, if we do drop lower, we've got that monthly demand down there to look for possibility of bouncing on US dollar dominance, and then wherever Bitcoin is. So obviously if this comes down here, then Bitcoin would have broken all-time high. Yeah, so that's pretty much it on Bitcoin. I hadn't looked either at the I think I had a look at when I realized that Bitcoin had made that 2-month demand. I then did look at total 2, total 3, etc., and they hadn't created the same demand, like so this, you know, hadn't closed above on the 2-month. Good to know, thanks. Got my new computer, so new but exactly the same spec as I had previously, so I'm probably going to get exactly the same issues. Anyway, yeah, so total obviously the strong monthly candle, but didn't close anywhere near above the 2-month to create a new 2-month demand in there, and it was basically the same on total 2. Again, that wasn't even anywhere near, so total 2 could still go higher to get up to the monthly supply, but it's rejected at the moment in this weekly. Appears to look like it wants to come back down. So obviously total 2 being mostly driven by ether. Total 3 the same again. So these charts very much just reflect what I'm saying on the majors and the challenges I got on the majors, that in this case, you know, it's come off monthly supply. In the case of total 2, it'll come off the weekly a little bit lower. They've all got this sort of weekly 5-day demands, but then in many cases we've got 4 days underneath this zone, so this wasn't quite tested. So this is what got me just before I went away, is that, you know, a lot of these just came in. A lot of the majors you saw tested this 3-day level. This didn't even quite get there off the top here before taking off, whereas I was hoping we would get a bounce and another wave down into this zone for proper longs. And the problem is now when you haven't had that tested, is it going to hold this zone, or is it going to come down into the lower before bouncing? And even then, and the other major challenge is it going to bounce? I don't know how much detail I'm going to get into on alts today, but what we have on so many alts now is that they've come up in many cases. Alts, this is a 3-month supply, 2-month or 3-month supply. So on the higher time frame, this very much could be the structure. Whether we're going to get bounces, you know, in the middle here, even if we do go down, is, you know, we just need to wait and see what reaction we get on those levels. Yeah, I'll have a look at gold in a bit. I haven't looked at any of the FX. Yeah, so yeah, like it might come down into this lower zone, but again, you know, or is this picking up? You know, because again, a lot of alts are on monthly demands and variable. I mean, you know, 6-month and annual in the case of some of the majors, but in most of the smaller alts, they're kind of either at all-time lows, or some of them are on these monthly demands in here. So is this going to be enough to retain the kind of larger upward structure? Or are these 3-month supplies going to play out to, like, would be a much higher time frame? You know, and as you may remember, that I said I was kind of looking for this on the others chart, there's potential for an inverse head and shoulders. Sorry, not inverse head, just a head and shoulders. This is kind of what I was thinking was going to be probable on others. And again, like, I wouldn't mind a little bit higher, so hopefully we'll get a bounce. So I've set some alerts on alts in these areas, and I've kind of said, you know, just be very careful, because the bigger structure, and they're because they are so variable, because they, you know, if they're coming off a 3-month supply in here already or at this high, then they could just dive straight back down again. So we're starting to see some of those hit. Excuse me, let's flip that too far. So we're starting to see some of those alerts hit now. And you know, we got in it over the last couple of days actually. So I've had quite a few, you know, a few have had bounces. So if I look at this on a low time frame, you'll be able to see that, you know, some of them got these kind of bounces, some stronger than others, and again, just variable. But you can see from this others chart that we still want to go a bit lower on the alt market before looking for longs, you know, even presuming this is to hold and we're not going to drop deeper into the zone below. And I guess you can see sort of similar in the structure here. This didn't actually get back to low as that. Well, I mean, even here, so here we had, like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then when it did the bigger retracement, you know, it didn't hold this zone above, and that I think is what I'm sort of relatively nervous about this time on the long side, is that we've got this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and are we going to come back down similar to this before getting some sort of bounce? So, you know, in the case of what I'm doing, I'm just setting some alerts on this first zone, and then I'm simply moving the alerts down to the lower zone when they hit. So it's going to be a question of what the overall market's doing. Total DeFi is pretty much the same. Again, you know, it's in this larger 2-month demand. It's got the same kind of gap and this really didn't test the lower zone at all, but it has this weekly and 5-day or 4-day in between. But again, very much like, are we getting that in that head and shoulders? Why do I call it? Keep calling it inverse head and shoulders for the head and shoulders pattern. And this is probably a better one because this shoulder is a little bit lower, or it's at least the same structurally there, whereas others I think is slightly higher. So this is slightly so in it for a better head and shoulders. You want to see this breakdown really here rather than a higher low. And that's a more confident head and shoulders. Yeah, anyway, so that's what I'm looking for on the alts, and just thinking maybe we could get another run. So hopefully we'll get another run here, but then we do have a 5-wave structure. So, is this the possibility where we get the 5-wave structure, we get the retracement, then we get another move up into there before the bigger drop? So I need to see how that kind of aligns up with like the US dollar dominance. Is that kind of going to be a similar where we get again retracement up into here, a little bit higher, up into here, comes back down, and then that would again align well with what the alt market's doing, and for this to hit monthly demand here. But anyway, this is all speculation. We're just looking at zones as and when they hit. Ether. Ooh. Okay, so Ether, as we know, like I had millions of, because we didn't test anything on the way down, so I had kept having lots of entries, and there were very high time frame zones to be watching. So there were so many weeklies and monthlies all through here, all 3 days and 5 days and 4 days, and like a lot of the alts, it's just sort of messy. But that with the circled one was the one that I was most interested in because this is a 3-month supply. So my bias on this, and now it's just like I said with alts in general, this is the challenge, that we've come down into this 3-month, in this case, zone, or in this case, it's swing failed through it, didn't quite hit the lower one. And this is actually similar to that structure I just described, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it takes out the immediate zone in favor of the lower zone. In this case, it didn't quite hit it. But again, now we've got this 3-month supply. So, and I've talked about this structure many times on Ether that so excuse the mess when I have all the drawings on, but again, we had this larger double top that possibly could do bigger picture, bigger move down. So thus, my bias at the moment is for that double top to play out with this 3-month supply coming down for a lower low, or at least at a minimum coming down to take out that wick into this 3-month demand, and then we'll see what the reaction is there. But I am very much short biased on Ether, whilst being conscious that this is a large 3-month zone. So it's like we had the initial hit on it, and we came up to the 61 fib, which was a 61 log fib actually. So the 61 linear fib is a lot higher. So again, we can still go higher in the zone, and obviously going to be very dependent on what Bitcoin's doing. But this is the area I was interested in for shorts. So today on Ether, so again, we've had another couple of drops. So we did drop it back and close the CME gap on this, but left a CME gap above. Bitcoin didn't leave the CME gap above because the bounce it had in between filled the CME gap. I think this sort of initial, actually that wick. So this move up, in the case of Bitcoin, went up and took out the high and therefore filled the CME gap, whereas Ether hadn't. So looking for, so this now we do have a 2-day supply in there. No, not quite. So we didn't. I think I've drawn it in, but we didn't quite get it. Same with Korea. No. So yeah, I've drawn it in. But I think I drew it in early last night before I went to bed. But Korea had a daily supply. Take that out now because it's not confirmed. Korea had the rejection off the daily supply, which was quite nice from yesterday. And also hasn't come back down and hit that lower demand. But again, like I said, while this is looking more bearish than Bitcoin, obviously it has scope to go up and fill that CME gap. Do I find similarities between BTC now and the fractal from 2021? Possibly. I'll have a look in a minute. Yeah, so Ether, yeah, again, like it's still holding a 12-hour demand there. It's starting to make some decent supply, but you know, again, it needs to break local demand for us to be confident of looking for the shorts on this. So like from the next like short term anyway, it's just waiting for this to come up and fill the CME gap and just see what reaction we get in there. See if, you know, if this demand here is strong enough to really like run this through to start making a new high. But at the moment, I would be more inclined to look for shorts on this because that's the high probability trade coming off the 3-month supply in there. Ether BTC obviously had a really big move up. Again, like this space for this to go potentially up to the weekly above. It's rejected off just a daily zone, you know, before making a higher high. But I think I commented on this in my last video that it's quite hard to see. You know, there's so many mini waves, and you know, really just one giant drop or a very significant drop from the last 2 years, really. So it's not clear where the waves are on this. You know, I fib from the top of the weekly to the bottom, and you know, we are in the 61 to 70 area. So again, decent area to look for short entries if you were shorting this. My preference really would have been a bit higher on this in the weekly supply. So I don't know, you know, it's possible maybe like Bitcoin is going to have a break higher than this. You know, then Ether would have to move up more. So I'm just, yeah, again, so like as I said at the start of the video, I'm just not fully across the confluence of these things at the moment because like while I've been updating individual charts, I'm not on top of it enough. What did you say? So similarities between now and 2021 on Bitcoin chart. Oh, this has updated all my charts to the wrong thing. That's good to know. There are kind of similarities in that, at least. So back in 2021, we didn't have a monthly supply, but we had a 3-week. Actually, not a 3-week. Excuse me, just got a frog in my throat. 2-week supply. So it's similar in that we had a 2-week supply here and we got a rejection off it, but only for, well, this was for 4 weeks. It's a much bigger rejection than what we've had at present. And then we went up and took it out. And then what we ended up with was what's called an expanded flat or an extended B wave or whatever the technical term is for it, where we have an A and then B takes out the high of A and then we had the larger C wave. It is possible we do the same now for sure, but again, we can't, like, I'm not judging that until like I see what the supply and demand is doing. As I said at the start of the video, obviously this is different because we made this 2-month demand in here and then we came off the top of it. So you know it's possible this just takes off if the 2 months really wants to play out. Similar here, we had a 2-month demand there, closed just above in September 2016, tapped off the bottom of it in November and just took off on the November candle, and it's very possible this does exactly the same thing here. The only thing I was kind of trying to compare, we didn't really see any differences, any similarities, was the kind of the reverse of what we had here, because similar, we had a 2-month supply created here when this candle closed below, but then it just pounded straight back up through it. And when I looked at the low time frame on that, I think again what we had, I need to look at the daily to see it because it was only a few days, but it was the September, so yeah, we closed below in here in August. The 3rd of September, we tapped up into that 2-month supply and then we came down. We didn't take out the low. You know, it had a few days of down, like that strong move down. Yeah, maybe BTC to 1 million, who knows? A lot of people are predicting that now, a lot of big institutions. I'm like, I have no idea where those numbers come from, but I mean, they're the ones that are pushing it, so it wouldn't bloody surprise me. But yeah, so similarly, so just to be conscious of that here, particularly also because we're at overall resistance, but you know that this tapped up into that supply, came down for a few days, and then just reversed its way back through it. So again, I mean, this has had longer, obviously, so it's a different structure, so it can't really be compared, but it tapped into the 2-month demand here, moved up, and now, yeah, just consolidating around here. But so we're definitely not seeing the same structure as yet as that, but obviously just a 2-month demand. It can run back through it if it wants, like eventually things break. But for now we are bullish based on the 2 month demand. Could it go to 1 million? Possibly. Um, if we went by this 2 month demand, we then had what's that, sort of a year plus, more than a year of up from there. So you never know. Maybe this will be more of the year of up, and it could take us up to 1 million. Um, it would then completely invalidate the parabola. So I think that's probably unlikely. But I'll actually have a look at what that parabola looks like. I haven't looked at that for a while. And then your other question, is it similar to this? Again, it could be. Like, the problem is I can't remember back from here like what the data was looking like. So as I've said, like the data here, like for me, although the Glassnode is contradicting what I think, Glassnode data, but for me, like while we had some accumulation in the 90k to 75k drop area, I haven't seen spot buying particularly. There's been some ETF buying, but not loads. But when you look at the CVDs in contrast to the price, CVDs aren't supporting this up move. Unless I guess the ETFs are buying over the counter rather than on Coinbase, etc., and therefore we're not seeing the CVDs reflected there, maybe. And then yeah, similarly here, like I can't remember what the data did, but this last, kind of move that we had towards the end of 2021 was just not what I expected. Like we had this clear 2 week supply in there. I wanted this, even to reject down into here. But it had very, very little. And then I suppose you can't underestimate Bitcoin and the power of FOMO. When people think its price is going to go up and they're going to miss out, this is just a sort of a last push. The other thing that was really interesting here that, again, you probably don't remember, but is one of the reasons I look at Korea so much is, and I think it was only at the last minute, so let me just check quickly. Yeah, I think it was only later, so again, I could only distinguish that later. But so Bitcoin, it was the second, that was the final all-time high candle, 2021 all-time high. And so I think we'd had this swing fail in October, and then everybody was trying to short this. And the one thing that was clear again on Korea is that Korea hadn't taken out the high on that October candle. So you can see this candle is very slightly below that line I've just drawn. So we then had another month of up until Korea also swing failed, and then everything dropped. So it's always worth watching out for Korea. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like at the moment, we're in supply, so it's simple for me at looking for short entries if they present themselves. And for me, I'd rather look for longs on alts and things that have got higher risk to reward than on something like this, which could firstly, if nothing else, just mess you around. We saw the fuckery over the last 24 hours that can just mess you around and stop you out for not much reward before eventually maybe it'll break out. And if you let's say you can manage to get an entry, you're a great trader and you manage to get an entry off today's low. On CME gap or something like that, where's your stop? Your stop, let's say under this low, being generous, but really it should be probably under the whole zone. So if we get to all-time high, that's, sorry, not the yesterday's high or today's high, that's, a 3-hour trade. If we do break out to 115k, let's say, that would be, which I said that's the 113% failed wave. So that, as far as the comparison to 2021, that's where I'm looking. So these two black boxes, one of which is the linear and the other is the log, but the 113 to 127 area would be where I'd be looking for a rejection if we're going to mimic 2021 and the failed wave structure that we have so commonly on Bitcoin. But anyway, even if you've taken that trade, it's a very high risk trade. It might take days, maybe it'll go up there in a day, but the chances are it's going to take a good few days to even go up there if it does. And, maybe you'll get 8 to 10 R if you then held it to like 115 to 120k. And like I say, that was being generous. But more likely, this potentially will come down, reject off this 4-hour, come down, wick you out, and then move. So for me, it's preferable to look for long entries on alts, which are less likely to wick you out and stop hunt you before moving. So yeah, anyway, structure on. So I guess the summary for this is Bitcoin structure is still up, coming off 2 months demand. So the macro structure is now flipped back to up, but we're still conscious we're in monthly supply and we're still kind of, approaching these levels where we were looking for possibility of rejection. Either way now we're at resistance, so I wouldn't get overexcited, too overexcited at resistance. And either you got in lower or you got in on this 2 month if you saw it where I hadn't. And then you just wait and see, else you're scalping it. Ether is sort of converse to that. I'm bearish on this because we're in 3 month supply. Obviously, it can go higher in the 3 month supply. It's come up, actually, it's tapped into that 3 day zone there. So obviously, we can go higher inside if we want to, but again, my bias is much more down on this. Oh no, I just moved an alert by mistake. Yeah, I didn't talk about the entries. So again, like I say, I haven't looked particularly at long entries on this either, because again, we've just got this giant green candle. We could retrace and just bounce somewhere in the middle, pick up one of these old supports over here. If it does come all the way back down the bottom, then it's probably not going to be particularly bullish anymore, and also that would mean the 3 month is very much playing out. So yeah, while again I've still left these alerts in here, for the CME gap close that we had down there, and then 5 day weekly demand at the base. I wouldn't be overly confident if we do come all the way back down into there. So again, like looking for longs on this if we see something locally. If you manage to get in on this 12-hour demand, that's fine. It's up to you. See if you want to hold this, if it is going to break up and try and do another wave from here. Else I would just wait this out for much lower levels, or for a new structure. So if this does come back up through here and then it flips in and makes a 2 day or a 2 day demand, then great. Oh no, finance. Yeah. So that's that. I feel like there's another CME gap somewhere higher than that, but really maybe it is that far away. Maybe it was that one I was thinking of. Yeah, so that's that. Then I'll quickly look at gold for you, Aussie man. So what did you ask? Gold big picture and small picture. Well, big picture is obviously to the moon. So the only thing with gold, is just, it's purely guessing really, like you're guessing where the top is. So the big picture is just up. And I did have an alert set for, I think it was 33.50, because that was the 261, so it was the 261 fib of this last up move. And I feel like there was another confluence there as well. I think we paused at least at the 161. That's the log fib. But I think, yeah, with so little history, it was hard to make any judgment. The only thing I did like, so I think I can't remember exactly what I had there, but there was a level, yeah. So the green level there at 33.50, which I think was the 261 linear fib, and there's the 200 fib, so we've come a bit closer to the 200 log fib there. But what I did kind of like, although you can't really see it in all my mess, is I had done a fib here, from the top there to the bottom here. And I quite liked, so again, you probably really can't see it because there's so much mess, but the 61 here fell in a weekly demand. Let's go back down to the lower time frame. 61 there was in the sort of weekly demand, which I don't particularly love, but then we've got 2 month demand, 3 month demand, and the 70 fib was kind of, again, decent levels in there. So it was kind of looking at the retracement levels. And I think, yeah, the 61 on the, where are we now, linear scale, again, was in this 2 week, 3 week demand in here. So I think I was just quite liking where the retracement levels were at. Let me see if I can go to the other chart. Did it better? I didn't do it. Where is it? Yeah, okay. this is a better representation. But again, like I say, it's kind of just guessing where the top is. So I think here, yeah, so I had the retracement of the wave from what 1976 to 2000, the 261. So again, it went just a bit through the 261 at the high there before retracing, and then it retraced 50% of this last up move. So then, yeah, with obviously very little data, very small sample size. Can you review weekly, daily timeframes? Yes, I agree. Yes, I'm getting there. Hold on, you asked for the big picture and the small picture, so this was the big picture. So yeah, then I again did the extension fib for the next wave, and again the 261. So that's, you can see where we've just gone now. So that's why I alerted that area. But you can see here it went slightly through there, slightly through here. So yeah, if we're going to follow confluence and have the same length waves, then it's possible we get a retracement from here. Then the other thing, I don't know why I've got a fib from there. That's quite okay. So yeah, I was looking again at then how much the retracements were. So this fib 0 to 100 here was the retracement of that initial move. So again, it was down. This was down to the 78 fib. Then the second wave was obviously a lot stronger and only came down to the 50%. But I guess what I was looking at then was if we rejected at that level, the 261, I've now extended it slightly because obviously the high is slightly higher. The wave from 2016 to now, the 61 to 70 area is broadly in this 6-month annual demand. So that's kind of a nice area. Then we've got the kind of bigger risk that we retrace the whole thing because we've had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then that would actually take us to 61 there, would take us broadly down to this annual level that I think was untested below. So let me just look at the annual quickly. Yeah, so there's an annual demand here that wasn't tested previously, and then an annual demand here. So the alignment of fibs was kind of decent, broadly decent, with those two levels. So hence I was looking at that as a top. So on that basis, again, I then started looking for shorts again, seeing, but it was very early days, so it held 3-day demand here on the bounce. So I had a long entry for there. I also had a more aggressive. So again, I've just kind of been doing it both ways. So that was the original alert for this is a possible top, but obviously it went higher through it. It had then made, I think, a 5-day or a 2-day supply in there. No, I think the 5-day came later. There was something in there. That was it. So yeah, I had made a 3-day supply here, so I did look for a short or put a short alert there, but ended up going right back through it. Then it went right back through it and then came right back through it. And now has made a weekly supply. So now, yeah, I'm kind of like with the weekly supply, I'm then becoming more confident of looking for shorts. So from a weekly perspective, I didn't alert this weekly because I just felt like it was a bit too aggressive, like right off the level, but it could drop straight off the level. Coming off 3-day demand, so obviously we're still in an up structure. So this is your last up move on the 3-day anyway. So this is still a messy retracement of that up move. So again, still has to break this low for it to be in a kind of downtrend on that time frame. There's also a weekly demand in there a little bit lower, so I think it could have wicked deeper into that zone. So I think I might reset that alert for a little bit lower in here. I think that's also worth looking for long entries on that. But again, yeah, now it is starting to, so you're right, it is starting to fall supply and it is starting to test them. So now potentially it could reject off this weekly right in here. It did have a bit of a gap here, so I previously had an alert for daily supply there, and I think there's also, yeah, so there is also a 5-day. So again, I re-alerted for a possibility of a short here. So here it's just been awkward, so it went through that and then came straight back through this. I think that was just a 12-hour demand there. And actually, I think the alert went a bit earlier, so I think it actually did get a bit of a bounce just before the zone, but then when it came back to the zone, it just went through it down into this 3-day. But yeah, so I think it's worth looking for the possibility of shorts if we get back up into here, but just be conscious we are still in an uptrend on this 3-day time frame. And you know, when gold, so I think when gold does want to, it doesn't come back down to test. So you can see there's a lot of levels here. It hasn't come back down to test, so it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come back down to this weekly demand either. But yeah, I just need to see a little bit more on that. And just for the confluence, yeah, silver also was a little bit messy, so I think I've got re-alerted like a retest of this 3-month level. So silver's just been messing around in here, so that's also not very helpful at the moment. But yeah, I think I'm going to keep an eye on that alert. So watch around the 3,300 level, see if it's going to get a reaction off there. Yeah, don't think. Let me know if you have any other questions on that. Then, so a quick look at the indices while I'm here. So yeah, we had a bit of a drop on the indices today, which obviously is also what helped Bitcoin on its way downward. But obviously these have now rebounded quite hard as well. I did have an alert there on yen. So I had an alert go this morning on FTSE, so that made a new weekly demand, so that's obviously reacted quite well. And the difficulty with these, again, is they're all in major supply. No worries, Aussie man. So S&P's in monthly supply, Nasdaq's in 2 week, but obviously, but they're all coming off these annual demands. So I just don't know if these are going to. I think DAX has after the dump has gone back and taken out all-time highs. So I just don't know if these are just going to follow and go straight for all-time highs again. In which case, then so will Bitcoin probably. No worries. Have a good evening. Yeah. So again, just watching the structures develop on these. There hasn't been anything for me to add on the short side yet. It looked like we might get that today, and the same on Bitcoin. But these are now obviously making a comeback at this stage. So yeah, I need to see a little bit more on this. S&P is looking a bit stronger, Dow's looking a bit stronger again, but it's very early in the week, so I don't know if they're going to go up and take out the highs from just Sunday or Friday and then drop. And they all did leave gaps below as well. And it's unusual for the indices not to fill gaps in the same week as they're created. So again, the following week, I don't know, maybe if they're super strong, they're just not going to, but just be conscious that those gaps are below. Yeah, so nothing really to add on that. And the dollar again, like has had a bit of a drop today. But again, I'm not across this enough really. Come back through daily demand there. This was an area I was looking for, the dollar to show some strength. We've got picked up support on the euro, and so the euro and pound and Aussie, etc. are just looking for what we're going to get on the retests. So they all did obviously drop while dollar went up. So is this going to be? Let's go into the dollar chart. Is this going to be a rejection of 3-day supply and just the next wave down now, or is it going to find support and make a higher low? But we can't judge that until we see the test back down here. So it's just above the 2-day demand there. It's come on off a daily. So this could pick up support here, but ideally we would want it a little bit lower inside there. I think there's a 4-day here that hasn't been tested. So I'd like to see this hit around the 99.6 level and see if that's going to pick up support for, another up move on this, or whether, if that doesn't, then we're looking for a potential drop down into this annual demand below. Anyway, so like I said, it's a bit of a haphazard stream because I'm not across everything at the moment. I'll just quickly go over the majors and then I'll kind of save the better streams for later this week when I know what I'm doing a bit more. So on the majors, obviously, so eventually I had quite good confluence. I did say that in the video. I think while I was away, I had quite good confluence. That wasn't perfect because I'm not all going to hit zones that I particularly wanted. But if we look at so BCH, obviously I was looking for that wick taking out those highs / 5-day supply in here. I think we only got the wick on the Coinbase chart. I think the others didn't, but anyway, got a decent rejection there, and that was the only one I got a retest entry on. Was the first and only to create a daily supply at this point in time anyway. And all the others I think then pushed a little bit higher, but however this held this daily supply for then the bigger drop there. And then, like I said, because I've been off my game, I hadn't put any follow-up entries on the others. So Litecoin was in 3-day supply rejection in there. Actually was one I wasn't overly confident of. Thought it could have come up higher inside, because again, a lot of these are just super choppy. So there's weekly, there's 2 weekly supply. So, and again, they could still come up higher in there. EOS, yeah, I had that entry for the 4-hour supply that I'd had from back here when it got missed. So obviously I'm not overly surprised that got run through. And again, didn't quite get to where I next would have wanted to short. So a couple of these I kind of think, yeah, while we've got a decent move off them, a decent correction at least, I do kind of feel that maybe we could pick up support and get another run when I look at these. I haven't really put any new long entries in yet, and for the same reason that I've talked about when I talked about the others chart, that they've got these sort of weekly demands, but in many cases have other zones that aren't tested below. So, in the case of Litecoin here, you can see it's got a 5-day weekly demand, and then it's got a weekly down here that wasn't tested, so I already had an alert down below. I think I've got an alert in there. It's hiding behind a... No, I don't apparently have to. Oh, so then there I do have the alert there. But again, is it just going to pick up immediate support? Is it ready to break down? I'm not 100% sure, and that I need to think through. EOS is sort of similar. So EOS is in a monthly supply, and it's come up quite. I was aggressively shorting from the monthly originally, and now it's come up a higher in the zone, which obviously can happen. Same with BCH, again, it's 3-month supply. It's come up, had good reactions provisionally, but then ended up moving up higher into the zone. So yeah, I need to think all these through, all the structures, and I don't know if I'm going to have any answers, but yeah, those are the considerations anyway. And it really is up to you if you want to look for more aggressive longs on these demands that are immediately below, or wait for a bigger drop. If you're an investor, I would say wait for a bigger drop, because I do think it'll be coming. It's just a question of whether we get another wave first. Yeah, so nothing new on those. Long entries very much lower on Ripple, BCH, Litecoin, and EOS, all the way down at the bottom of that up move. But yeah, like I said, they're probably too conservative, so I guess we'll see. I think I did put a more aggressive one on BNB. I'm not really sure why, because that was the one that I didn't like, the BTC pair. And ADA, so ADA I've already got a weekly demand alert down there. Dogecoin also weekly demand below the new weekly demand that's been created. So again, like both of these have weekly demands first. The same link also has made a new weekly demand above where I had the original alert, and it's just a question here: is it going to give me a higher low here, even if just for a scalp entry, or is it just going to come straight back through? Very, very dependent on what Bitcoin's going to do. So yeah, you can look at all these weekly demands. I will try and get through these later tonight and put some new entries in of zones to watch. So if I do that, then I'll update it in Telegram. And then yeah, you can see the see the new entries there. BNB came off a 3-week supply up here, so again, we need to think about the bigger structure on this. I'm just conscious with all of these, I guess, that they are coming from 1 year, 6-month demand zones. So possibly I'm just being too conservative. So you can see the link at the moment is trying to pick up the 6-month level, retesting this 6-month level, having gone deeper inside it, so it's possible it picks that up as support. This is a question, like, again, is the confluence there? When I look at the confluence, I don't think it's there. Like, you see BNB is miles off support, Link is closer, Doge is miles off, ADA is close. So I don't know if I probably need to judge things a bit more like, if ADA's too close, then it's possible ADA's going to run through that zone, whereas, BNB might hold that immediate zone because it's further away. So it's for the confluence to be in the right spot. So that's kind of what I need to think through a bit more. On the short side anyway, that obviously I had BNB 3 week supply. Link, nothing there, but obviously it was just in a daily. Not really. I think it was, yes, it's in supply, it's in a retest level, but again, I would have preferred higher for a more confident short on that. But it's so from a confidence perspective, I didn't have all these alerted at the highs, but and the ones that I didn't have alerted are still in supply. They're just not necessarily at higher probability levels that I really wanted. And Dogecoin was in, it hit a weekly supply there and has a monthly above, so again has scope to go higher, but I would like to see more of a retracement first. ADA also, yeah, so it retested this monthly, and I think I talked about this in my last video that it could retest this monthly level here. It had such a big daily and this big gap here, so I was again just being a bit more conservative on that, again given coming off 6 months demand. And then finally, Dot, Sol, Atom, and Near, again slightly more awkward. So again, all in supply. So I think Dot was the only one, and Dot and Sol went. So Dot went up for the 3 months, so it obviously went lower, and I had said again the confluence wasn't there, so I thought maybe it could go higher inside, and it did just take out those trendline stops there that I've talked about previously, but didn't quite get up to where I wanted it to look for a short in proper supply. Atom basically the same, I was waiting for those stops for God knows how long until I gave up and was shorting down here before it actually took off, and then obviously then finally did come back for those stops. Again, this is still an overarching 3 month supply, so again I'm still bearish on both of these, but they have gone higher inside the zone. But again, unfortunately not to quite where I would have liked to look for better shorts. And even above there's a lot of chop, so I've got the more aggressive alerts, there's a 4 day supply there, but then I've said, there's a weekly and a monthly inside higher, and I think Dot's basically the same. Again, there's the more aggressive 4 day, but then it could go higher in the zone, there's weeklies and things much higher. Near was just a retest of this weekly, so again, it's one of the, Near I kind of wanted to be one of the stronger ones, being as it came off as about one of the only of these four, the only one that came off as sort of 3 months demand at the lows there. But also, even if it does come off a 3 month, quite often you'll find it go deeper inside, so maybe it's just a bit too early for it. But again, unable to get past weekly, 2 weekly supply here. But again, new weekly demand. So all of these again have these new weekly or 5 day demands. So I need to think about, whether I want to look for more aggressive long entries. I think the only one I did put one on was Dot, because there's a 3 week demand in there, but I've also said it's coming from a 3 month supply. So again, we've got that challenge. I'm going to take those weekly levels out now, but there is that challenge that yes, this might give a balance, but maybe the 3 month is going to overarchingly be what pushes this down much deeper. Sol's basically the same, it's got this huge 3 month supply. I had said, I think I had the alert here for the weekly, but I'd said there was a double top here that I thought very possibly could get targeted, and then the next area of interest was this monthly level just above. So again, it didn't quite get to the monthly supply, but it's now obviously dropping a bit down from there. So yeah, like all of these, as I say, like the conference just it was kind of there for shorts at the highs, but not necessarily as perfect as I would like for a big drop, but it was certainly there for a consolidation drop or a correction, which is what we're seeing right now. But yeah, I do need to just think a lot more about them, whether we're going to get, whether I need to be putting long entries in more aggressively than the ones I've had from previously. So again, Sol on this weekly below with a new weekly in between now. Near I had it on this 4 day below, but it now has 1 week, 3 week in between. Dot, like I've said, I pulled it up on this. Dot I think at least had tested the lower zones, and also had a bigger move up from there. So again, might be more likely to get a reaction at the start of this pump. And Atom again has a 3 week demand, but my alert for long was always a lot lower on Atom. Excuse me. But yeah, I'm now getting a bit coughing. And yeah, so these are all the considerations that I've had on the alts So I have that back. So I've got a huge list now for the May alerts, but I did go back through to the ones at the beginning of the month, which are the ones I did in the videos when I was in Thailand. So all the longs worked really well on the first set. Then on the second set, it's kind of a mixture of longs and shorts, and again, somewhat better than others. The shorts are like some of them pushed higher in the zone. So like you can see here, for example, SEI. You know, I think I had an alert here for the 2 week, which obviously got front run slightly. Then it came back higher, so I reset the alert. So obviously it's gone kind of higher in the 2 week zone, but it is still holding this 2 week supply. And then I've had an alert go on that today for 5-day demand. So again, a more aggressive alert on that. So yeah, so far I haven't seen many break, but then also I haven't got to section 2, which I think this is when a lot of the short alerts were coming in, and while the market was still holding. So I need to have a look. There's a long alert on Buzz. Just wanted to have a look at that because it's a 28% rise, which is unlike what the rest of the market's doing right now. So obviously this is one that I would have had the alert for weekly demand there, but it's come significantly deeper inside it. Like I said, that's also the challenge with these, that some of these weekly demands have a big green streak, so they aren't necessarily going to bounce off the top, and can potentially like retrace back to the start of the wave inside the zone. So yeah, so I still need to go through all of these, but I think like a lot of them we're going to see have either come. In the case of Brett here, actually, it's held, but yeah, they're going to be a mix across the board for that middle section, and then I've kind of made a new section now for the ones that have come in the last couple of days. CI back there, just so I can monitor what as these long entries hit. I've got a couple of shorts. I had a Mudeng short there and one on anime, but L3 coming into a zone, bearer, like, so some of these are very risky still. So the bearer, for example, it's just a daily. This is still very much clearly in a downtrend, and that's just a swing fail off the top there, but is it going to make another move now from there all the way up to there? You never know, it's possible, but this is not a high probability. Obviously a high probability long entry at this point on something like that. There are going to be others that are better. So I'm trying to think if I've got a better one in here. I mean, Cheems maybe. I mean, this is still a bit difficult because this is still a very corrective move. So it's had a big up move, it's dropped. This is a corrective move up, so I expect this to fall the way back down there. But at least, so as an example, this would be better from the perspective of long, because at least it's actually one of the stronger coins and it is in a bigger uptrend. But yeah, they're going to be quite variable as to what's coming in now, and the same as what I've said with all the majors. As these start coming down and hitting these weekly demands, we need to see what reactions these give. You got in token XAI1Z. I haven't even heard of XAI1Z. Is that even a coin? But we'll be holding it till $50. That seems optimistic, but go for your life. I hope it works out for you. Yeah, so anyway, that's pretty much it. So I will just continue to monitor Bitcoin and see what this is going to do, and I will continue to monitor what those majors are going to do as they come back into the levels, into the zone. So if I can come up with any new analysis, and like I said, I want to look at the BTC pairs as well, and new entries. If I change any of these long entries, I will try and post in the Telegram channel, so please feel free to join the Telegram, add to these charts and any new analysis, yeah, I hope that's useful to some extent. Like I say, a bit of a haphazard stream while I just test out the computer situation, and I will try and do another stream tomorrow, or at least tomorrow or the next day, and just start looking again at some of the alts. So any requests, yeah, please like and subscribe if you're interested. If you want to see more content, any requests, please put in the Telegram channel or put as a comment on these videos, and I will check through and see if you have any alt requests. And have a great evening.